And as a psychotherapist, I know you've done couples work. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how would this conversation translate into a couple relationship? So, they say opposites attract. I guess that may be true to get you into the marriage. But do opposites continue to be attractive as the pressures of life mount? What happens if you have a husband and a wife, or two people in a relationship where there's strong differences in their strengths? How does that impact the relationship? What unique challenges might it impose on the relationship, or maybe unique strengths that it gives to the relationship when people are different?
Right. I find that most people have a very strong assumption of what relationships and marriages are meant to be like. And when you're rigid on your way of thinking of this is the way it's supposed to be, I have a value that, we do everything together, right? We're best of friends and we do absolutely everything together. And the other partner is like, no, we have, you're my life mate and we have an intimate relationship and I'm faithful and exclusive to you, right? But I also have a very strong social network, and that's very important to me. I have my hobbies. I have things outside of the house that are very important for me. And so there seems to be a conflict. This individual is saying, well, you don't love me because you're not spending all this time with me. And the other one's saying, no, I love you, but this is what I need in my life. And my experience is that we have to we have to expose the assumptions first and see if there's a place for us to work. And as long as we can get to an understanding of each individual, this is who I am, and this is what's important for me. This is who I am. This is what's important for me. Based on those values, can we still meet in the middle? I'm willing to give a little bit. But again, going back to that first conversation, if there's too much resistance, it's not going to work. If there's just the right amount of resistance, then yeah, you can actually grow into a beautiful relationship. Kind of like going to the gym, right? If you're working out and you put on too much weight, that's way too much resistance. You're probably going to tear a muscle. It's not going to be enjoyable. It's bad stress. You have the right amount of pressure, good stress, you're going to grow and become stronger. So it's very much, I guess the running theme that I'm experiencing is I don't have general rules. I'm very much you have to take a look at the dynamics of the individual situation.
Yeah, when it comes to humans, I guess the only rule is that there are no rules. Each person is so complex and so different.
So I will say that there's one rule that I've seen is consistent.
Yes.
Which is, from my experience, all humans have two very basic needs. And this is true everywhere. How it comes out is different for each individual. And there's two very basic needs is safety and significance. We all need that. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have that experience in these interpersonal relationships, we're not going to desire these relationships, be it parent-child, co-workers, husband and wife. If those two elements are not in there in that dynamic of the relationship, mm-hmm. it's not going to thrive.
Safety and significance.
Safety and significance.
Drill down a little bit on that. So what's your definition of safety and what's the definition of significance?
So to totally dumb it down, I would say safety would be a safety of really just the body, right? And could even be stuff like how an individual speaks, right? I don't know how much experience you have with, the Israeli father, right? The Israeli father talks sturdily, loudly, and be like, why are you yelling? And he'd be like, I'm not yelling, right? But that's just the way they communicate, right? I don't know if you've ever been in an Israeli restaurant. Everyone's yelling at each other. You're like walking in, you're like, what's going on? They hate each other. No, they love each other, right? But from a nervous system standpoint, for a child or a baby, right? Like that's not necessarily feeling safe, even though there might be a tremendous amount of love there. So generally speaking, safety is the body, physical safety. Now the emotional safety, that's more from the significant standpoint. And that's, do I feel important here? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? Do I feel understood? That's the significance piece.
Mm-hmm. This is such fantastic stuff. I'm so happy that you're here, Dan. And you throwing out value bombs over there. And our listeners and viewers are truly fortunate to gain from your wisdom.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I'll tell you how far the significance piece goes.
Please.
I don't know why, but a couple of years ago, I had a slew of new clients coming in from the banking industry, different banks. I don't know why or how. They weren't referring each other.
Oh, I've worked in the banking industry. I understand it perfectly. Why?
And all of these clients who came to me were either on stress leave or just about to go on stress leave.
Wow.
And when we drilled down to it, they would bring in things like overworking, too much expectations, all of this. And when we got down to it, and I started doing role playing and thought experiments with them, and I acted like their immediate supervisor, and I spoke to them, right? Like, oh my goodness, I got too much work. And I spoke to them in a way that made them feel significant and understood. They almost consistently said to me, you know what? If my boss spoke to me like this, I'd probably do more work for less pay. That's how important significance is.
Wow. So to flourish, to put
Yeah.
it in other words, you need that safety, that physical safety, that safety of body, safety of space, energy,
Right.
I guess, and you need the significance that you feel seen, that you feel heard, that you feel respected.
Right. For an entrepreneur, it's going to be more difficult because
Mm-hmm.
they have to provide that for themselves,
Yes.
right? They
The
can't
lonely
necessarily rely
entrepreneur.
that on other people.
Yeah, that is a huge challenge of being the lonely entrepreneur, that you have to go, unless you have a good coach, of course, then that helps. That helps.
But even with a good coach, if it's the wrong, right? I actually when I was doing my consulting agency, right, in marketing, I hired a business coach because it's like, why can't I grow this thing? I have all the skill sets. I know I can make a tremendous amount of money with this. Why can't I grow this? And after a few months, my business coach came into my office and he said, Don, we have to talk. I said, yeah. He goes, we're getting a divorce. I said, why? He says, I can't help you in something you don't want to be helped in, right? Like this isn't what you want to be doing. You have the skills, you have the opportunity, you have the soft skills, you have the hard skills, but you don't want to be doing this, right? I wasn't going back to it. I wasn't feeling significant by helping somebody sell windows, right? And yeah, you can do some mind tricks of like, yeah, but you're helping him provide for his family and all of this. I didn't care. That's what it came down to.
So that precipitated the transition to becoming a psychotherapist.
Very much.
So it's interesting. Computer programmer, marketer, psychotherapist. They're very different. Like, it's not a typical career trajectory that you would like. The average guy starts off as a computer programmer and ends up as a psychotherapist. I guess you're looking after the software, the mental software of human beings. So one could see that there's some similarities there. But it's a very untraditional career trajectory for sure.
Correct.
So there's this concept that we are supposed to be in the image of God, right?
Yes.
But the problem with that is that Jewish faith teaches us that God has no image. So,
That's a nice
so what is the
contradiction.
image? It's a contradiction there. What is the image that we're supposed to be?
Right.
If he has no image? And that's the answer. We should have no image. The minute you have an image, in other words, then you've limited yourself. You've confined yourself to, this is what I am. I am a computer programmer, or I am a marketer. And even if I'm desperately unhappy as a marketer,
Yeah.
it's what I am. So you define yourself. I am. Anything I think you say after the word am in the expression I am is a very limiting thing. It's like, okay, this is your identity and it's nothing else. But you've successfully really transitioned in a very deep way. So what do you think is the kind of the key to being able to not pigeonhole yourself, not be confined to a very specific niche or a career path? How do you do that successfully? How do you change, and how do you get people to recognize and support that change? Like, if I can imagine that if a Jewish mother has successfully raised, the pinnacle of Jewish mother's success is to raise a child who's a doctor, and the child walks in one day and says, "Ma, I want to be a marketer or a computer programmer." So how do you make sure that when you want to change and you want to transform and you want to align closer with what your real values are and what your real yearning and mission and purpose is? How do you do that, first of all? How do you make that transition within yourself? And how do you deal with the world around you that may object and may even try and prevent you from making that change?
Right. you said so many things that took my mind on so many different paths, starting
Sorry.
with
Sorry about that.
the image of God, the mother, and these two very difficult questions. Difficult in the sense of the I think the answer is easily said, hard to execute. From an internal standpoint, I think it's starting to understand that we have a couple of different voices inside of our head. I remember as a kid, people would say, don't talk to yourself. People will think you're crazy. Nowadays, everybody says, talk to yourself, right? And talk to yourself a lot and listen to what's going on inside your head. I think the more we become attuned to what's going on inside, we'll hear that voice, the quiet voice of growth. It's a little bit resistant, a little bit afraid, but it's guiding us in the right direction. That's that voice of saying, kind of like planting a seed, right? There's always going to be, going back to that, the right amount of resistance will create a good amount of stress, and that's where the real growth comes in. So if we can learn to listen to that voice of, and typically it sounds like, you're lying in bed, you're in the bathroom, you're watching TV, or whatever's going on, and that voice just keeps repeating itself over and over and over. What if? What if? What if? What if? Right? What if you do this? What if you do this? Right? And you start listening, and you hear, oh, it's the same thing happening over and over again. It's saying, what if I go on this? Well, that's too scary, right? Now the question is, why is it so scary? Why am I so afraid to go on this journey? I was totally afraid to. I remember for me, it was kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off when I decided to totally shift my business. And I was so scared to hit the send button. I had written up an email to every single one of my clients at the time, basically saying, as of today, I'm done, right? I couldn't do this transition part, like, slowly transitioning off. I attempted, it just didn't work for me. And I remember just, sitting there with that send. And then that was that quiet voice. The other side is all the resistance you're going to get from the outside world, right? Like, what are you doing? That's so irresponsible. How can you possibly do that? Will you actually succeed? How do you know? Right? So this is where a great coach comes in, right? Where self-determination, self-esteem, confidence comes in. And really what it comes down to is if you feel significant enough, either through a coaching, individually, because you have a good support system, that resistance is not going to be so great because you have people or yourself around you who are encouraging you, who understand you well enough and say, this is a good thing, even though the rest of the world might say otherwise. So you're creating this little microcosm for yourself saying, oh, I'm safe and significant in this world. I'll be okay.